Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be painting on a 8-inch plaster rock. These rocks are from the Rock Shop Co. on Etsy. And I've already painted this one with our base, but this is how they come when they're just blank. And my dad owns the Rock Shop Co. on Etsy where I get these from, and he's actually a dental technician, so he gets this material called labstone, and I love it because it's super durable. It is a little bit heavier, but for the durability, I feel like it's worth it. So that's what they look like blank. They're super awesome because they have the center point marked. So that is the surface we'll be painting on. I am getting some little art stands for these because they are bigger and they're thin, so they can fit. Let me see if I can show you real quick. I have like an art stand like this that I got from, I think this is from Michael's, but just like a little easel. Obviously this is a weird angle, so you guys can't really see that well. And this one's a little bit big, but I ordered some smaller ones from Amazon, so that would be a good way to display these because they are a bit larger. But yeah, I just like painting on rocks. These ones are nice because they're super thin. They're not thicker and bulkier like the ones that I normally paint on. So I'm excited to paint on this for the first time. So there's our surface, and then I'm just going to go through some of the tools real quick that I'll be using. I will be using these nail stylus tools, and I will leave a link to a size chart in the description of the video so you can see the size of my specific set and then convert it to whatever set that you are using, since all stylus sets are a little bit different when it comes to sizing. And I will be using these brushes from US Art Supply. These also have the size on the handle, so I'll be sure to let you know what size I'm using. Same with the dotting rods from Happy Dotting Company. These also have the size right on the handle. And almost all of the tools that I use can be found on my Amazon shop, which I will link in the description of the video. That can also be found by going to my website, thoughtfuldots.com, and clicking on the Tools I Use tab. That will also take you to my Amazon shop. I'll be using this compass to help draw on some guide marks, along with the Brossarth white charcoal pencil. And I will be using a 12-point mandala stencil today. As far as colors, as you can see, I've already painted my base using Deco Art Americana in Winter Blue. So I'm going for a really like gentle, soft, calming palette. So that's why I chose the Winter Blue as the base. And then we are gonna be doing some browns and blues and also white. So I keep my white in just a little thing like this because I use it often, but this is Deco Art Americana Snow Titanium White. So I'll be using white, probably be using some pearl. This is Deco Art White Pearl. Oyster Beige, Shoreline, Moody Blue, Mississippi Mud, and Portobello. So I noticed a lot of people have trouble finding Portobello, but just by looking at it, I can tell that if you just add some white to Mississippi Mud, you'll get a very close color to Portobello. So feel free to substitute any colors that you, of these colors that you don't have. And then I'll probably use some Nuvo drops. I kind of pulled some that may match this palette. So I have Wedgwood Blue, Ivory Seashell, which is like a pearl, and Antique Rose is kind of like a brownish tone, a light brownish tone. And that's probably it. So I won't know which ones of those I will use until the end because I use those more as accent tones. But I think that's it. I'm going to be using just a regular paint palette. Mine's dirty, but I wanted to show you how I clean these. So I just let the paint dry in the palette, and then I take a tool, like a sharp tool, and then I just scoop them out. Some are easier than others. You can also use your fingernail. I got long fingernails, so that works. But usually they just pop right out like that. So that's how I clean them. I just let the paint dry. I don't like putting paint down the sink, so I let them dry and then pick them out. So that's what we'll be using for our paint today. This Lazy Susan is also in my Amazon shop, and it's really helpful when painting these larger rocks that are a little bit heavier because it moves just nice and smooth. Okay, so first we're going to draw on our guide marks. So I'm just grabbing that 12-point mandala stencil. And again, there's already a center dot there. Super convenient. So we're just going to place this right over that center and hold down. And we are going to draw on the vertical guide marks. And then I'm going to draw one set of circular guide marks. So just do this one line, and then we're going to use the compass to draw them out further. So there are our guide marks. I don't like using this stencil for the circular guide marks because there's all these little gaps. I like a full circle, and I like to add more in between so that we have more guide marks. So to make it easy, we'll do one set and kind of work off of those. Okay, so we're just putting this right over the center, and then we are going to extend out each guide mark that we just marked right here. So start on each line. Lazy Susan is also really helpful for this part. Okay, and then we are just gonna go back in between each guide mark, each circular guide mark, and so we're basically gonna double the amount that we have. And it's okay if these are a little bit off, like if it's not the exact same distance, we're just kind of eyeballing. In order to recreate the pattern that I'll do, the vertical guide marks will be the most important. Circular ones, not so much, but they're still helpful. I just like to blow off any residue from the pencil so that it's not smudging. And we can get started on our design. I'm just going to kind of go with the flow on this today. So whenever I use lighter backgrounds, I like to use a lot of brush strokes. For some reason, when it's a lighter background, I feel like if you do a bunch of dots, the pattern just kind of gets lost. So you almost need a lot of brush strokes to bring back that like boldness. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna incorporate a lot of brush strokes. Yeah, it's morning. I'm still just having my coffee. This mug says Memphis, but I've never been to Memphis, so I have no idea where this came from. All right, so we're gonna start with the center dot. And for colors, I also just wanna go with the flow on that. I think I want the center to be blue, so I'm gonna start with the darker blue, the moody blue. Gold would also look really nice in this palette. Okay, so I want a large center dot. We can do the size 14. And for the center dot, you want to make sure you have enough paint in your palette as well as on your tool. You want to make sure your tool is dipped in there pretty good, and then I always lift it up and look underneath and make sure that there's a big mound underneath. You want it to almost be dripping off. And then we are just going to do our best to get right over that center. And as you can see, there's some ripples in there. That just means that we need more paint. So I'm just dipping again. And then instead of pushing all the way down, I'm just hovering over the top. And you can just do that until you get the nice little mound that we want. And then I'll just be using a paper towel to wipe my tool off. So pearl will be really pretty, but I also am like wondering, this is brand new, so I need to open it. I'm wondering if gold, but not too gold. I have been using, sorry guys, I'm just trying to get this off. So there's the pearl, and then I've also been using the champagne gold, which is like a really soft, subtle gold that would also look really pretty. So I'm wondering if I want the palette to be more pearly or more gold, but maybe we'll do both. I'm gonna start with the white pearl. And I'm gonna use the larger end of the yellow stylus tool. And we are gonna start our first row of dots. These ones might be a little harder to see. They're very light. So we are just doing our best to make these all the same size. And I don't count these. I'm just getting them as close to one another as possible without touching so that the paint doesn't run together. And just getting it as close to that center dot without touching. And then just doing my best to keep them all the same size. And we will just fit however many we can here. I've had a lot of people say that when they follow my tutorials that their pattern ends up a little bit smaller than mine. I think that's because I really load up my tool with paint. I'm not just like dipping it once and then dotting. I'm really getting a lot of paint on there. I feel like that gives me more control. So basically I put a lot of paint on the tool and then I just will do more or less pressure depending on the size of the dot that I want. So, and then if it's small, then I just tap a couple times and it unloads more paint and it will make it bigger. So I get a lot of paint on my tool and then I just use various techniques like pressure to get the size that I want. And then I just kind of eyeball to see about how many dots we can fit here. I'm actually gonna wipe up just that last dot because the spacing is just a little bit off. So I'm going to space these a little bit farther apart. And then I think we can just fit about 2 here. So let's see. My dots the sizes are a little bit off. It's like smaller here and then got a little bit bigger here. So let's see, for the next row, so if the spacing is a little bit off or the sizing is a little bit off, then the next row, if you go in between each dot, then that's gonna be off as well. So for the next row, since that pearl row is a little bit, the sizes are a little bit different, I'm just going to start a new row instead of trying to go in between every other. So I'm gonna go up in size to, let's see, I'm gonna use the larger end of the white tool. And let me just think about what color I wanna do. I think I'm gonna go for Portobello. Especially with these new bottles, you wanna make sure the paint is all mixed up. It's actually a little bit lighter than I thought, so I'm gonna do the Mississippi Mud next. Well, no, we'll do Portobello. So large end of the white tool. And we are just going to kind of start a new row, and I'm gonna try to get a more consistent size this time. So we are just going right above that previous row. And I can fit about 2 more right here. Just tapping to make that dot a little bit bigger to fill in that space nicely. And that spacing and sizing is a lot better. So now we can go up in size on tools. I'm gonna go up to the large end of the blue tool. And now we can probably go in between each dot from the row before, and the spacing should all be good. So now what color? Let's see here. I'm gonna do the shoreline. Large end of the blue tool. And we are now going to dot in between each dot from the previous row. See how I twirl my tool in the paint each time? I'm not just dipping it, I'm twirling to get more paint on the tool. That also just gives nice plump dots because you're having more paint on the tool. Okay, I'm gonna do one more row and I'm gonna go up in size to the large end of the green tool. And now I will use the Mississippi Mud. So you can see Mississippi Mud and Portobello are really close in color. This is just a little bit lighter. Okay, so large end of the green tool. Mine has a little paint on it, so I'm just chipping it off with my fingernail. All right, and we are now going to dot in between each dot from the previous row. And it's okay if there's a little bit of a gap between these dots, because once they dry, we can go back and add some little micro dots in between there, and that will just fill in that gap really nicely. Doing the YouTube is different than when I do live classes on Patreon, because right now I'm wondering, should I add gold? But since it's not our live Patreon class, I can't get your guys' feedback, which kind of stinks. But that is what I'm wondering right now, if I should add gold or just stick with the only pearl. I think the soft gold would look really pretty with this palette. this dot's a little bit small, so I'm just gonna see if I can add a little bit of size to it. Okay. That's looking good. I'm just gonna bring my light over a little bit closer. Okay, so now I just need to think about what pattern. I'm gonna go for the Moody Blue. Yeah, Moody Blue. And I'm gonna use the size 6 rod. And I'm just dotting right above the brown row that we just did. And then I'm gonna dot on every other vertical guide mark. And you just want that vertical guide mark to be going right through the center of your dot. So just do your best and then skip every other guide mark. Okay, I'm just gonna wipe the tool off. And I'm just thinking about pattern. I am gonna use the gold, so I'm gonna use that champagne gold. And I'm gonna use the large end of the blue stylus tool. And I'm just going to make a dot right at the tip of the blue dots we just made, and I'm just keeping these dots right on that vertical guide mark so that everything's nice and lined up. And then I'm just gonna flip that tool over and use the small end of the blue tool. And we are just going to walk the dots down. Okay, so now we're gonna do some swooshes, and you can either use a dotting rod. If you're gonna use a rod, I'd use probably the large end of the white tool and just dot and drag down. But I'm going to use a brush. I like the way the brush looks better. It's just more smooth. So I can show you both real quick. Let me think of what color. I'm going to do oyster. Actually, no, I'm not going to do oyster beige, but I'm going to pour it. I'm going to do Portobello next. So if you're using a dotting tool, you can use the large end of the white tool. And the tips of these petals are all about on this guide mark. So I'm going to start these a little bit shorter than the tip of the petal and just drag down. Like that. I don't know, a dotting tool might be better for these. Let's try a brush and compare. So this is US Art Supply 5/0, so just a smaller brush. So they just have a little bit of a different look. They're a little bit more rounded. So you can use either a brush or a dotting tool. And we're just going to do that on each petal. All right, so I'm just gonna rinse my brush off. And I'm gonna use the same brush, and I'm going to use the Shoreline, so the light blue color. And I'm just gonna make these a little bit shorter. And then I almost forgot about the white, so I'm gonna add some white. And these ones are just going to be slightly shorter again. And they're gonna meet, so you can see there's this pattern, and then there's a vertical guide mark going right down the center. So the last brush stroke, they're gonna meet right up against that vertical guide mark. Like that. pretty. Okay. So I'm just rinsing my brush off. And I'm just kind of thinking of patterns, but before we move on, I'm gonna do those little micro dots that we talked about. So I'm gonna grab the small end of the pink tool. You just want a really small tool. And then I'm gonna use the gold. And I like to dot on the outside and then inside. And then we're just going in that little gap in between each brown dot from our last row. Just kind of filling in that gap and then also just adding another layer of little detail. You could also use the Nuvo drops for these. Either one works well. Okay. So next, I'm just thinking about our options here. I think we can just repeat this pattern. I'm going to add a little dot here. So I'm taking the large end of the blue tool and just right above where the two white meet, I'm just gonna add a gold dot. And then I'll have a sip of my coffee. We're going to take, let's see, the size 8 dotting rod. And let's do the Mississippi mud, so the darker brown. I actually need a little bit more in my palette. And we are gonna dot right above those gold dots that we made. Unfortunately, the pattern got a little bit off of that vertical guide mark, so I'm gonna see if I can just correct it. So trying to get everything back on this vertical guide mark. Sometimes it gets a little bit off. Awesome. I'm loving this palette. Okay, next I'm going to, let's think here. I'm gonna use the larger end of the yellow tool and the pearl color. And I'm just going to dot the tip and then walk the dots down along the brown. Okay, so there we have our pearl. Next, I'm going to do, let's see. Let's do the shoreline. So the lighter blue. And I'm using the large end of the blue stylus. And we're gonna make a large dot at the tip. And then we're gonna flip the tool over and use the smaller end. I'm just gonna pour a little bit more. The smaller end of the blue tool. And we are just going to walk the dots. And we will just do that for each petal. All right, and now we are pretty much just repeating that same pattern that we did before. So I'm going to take, let's see, what brush did I use before? I'm gonna use the 2/0 brush. So just a medium length brush, a little bit on the thinner side. And what colors do we want to do? I haven't really used the oyster beige yet, so let's do that. And all of these petals come up to this circular guide mark here. So I'm just gonna start our swoosh right below that guide mark. So it's kind of hard to explain, but that gold dot that I put right here, the reason I put it there was to extend this pattern up a little bit because I knew that I wanted to do brush strokes. And if that dot wasn't there and this dot was just right where that gold one is, then we wouldn't have a place for our brush strokes to end. I hope that makes sense. So this gold dot just kind of moved our pattern up a little bit and gives us more room for our brush strokes to come down into this area. So putting more pressure at the top, then lightening up towards the bottom. Brush strokes are really smooth and satisfying once you get the hang of them. If you guys would like more practice with these, I do have a whole brush strokes course that focuses only on brush strokes. So all of my courses will be linked in the description of the video if you guys would like more help with these. But seriously, once you get them down, they're just so smooth, so calming. I love doing brush strokes. All right, I'm just going to rinse that off. Next, I'm going to do Moody Blue, so the darker blue. Same brush. And I'm just going to do these ones slightly shorter. So just right up against the previous brush stroke. If your previous brush stroke is still wet and your paint's running together, then you can just let it dry for just like a minute. You don't need long. Okay. Next, I'm going to do, let's see. I'm gonna do the darker brown, so the Mississippi Mud. And I'm just looking at the spacing. I think I can fit about 2 more brush strokes. So, well, maybe only 1 actually. That's fine. So we're gonna do, it's hard because there's like not quite enough space for 2 brush strokes, but kind of too much for 1. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do some thicker brush strokes and just do 1 more set. So I'm using more paint and I kind of extended it out a little bit because we want to get right up against that vertical guide mark that's going through the center. So in order to fill that space nicely, we need to make these thicker so that they're coming all the way to that center guide mark. And you also just want to make sure that each brush stroke is starting at at about the same circular guide mark, and that will make sure that everything is the same length. Okay. So I am just rinsing off my brush. And I'm just thinking, we could honestly just repeat that pattern again. Maybe we just do that just for fun. So yeah, let's just do it again. I'm gonna take the large end of the green tool and the gold, and again, we're just gonna do that gold dot right here. I think I need a little bit more gold paint. Yeah, maybe we'll just repeat that pattern and see if we can do the whole piece with just this one type of pattern. Okay, what color next? I think I will do it's hard to decide. I think I'll do the Moody Blue. And we're just going to dot right on top. Sorry, this is the size 10 dotting rod. And we're just dotting right above each little gold dot that we did. So as we move out, I'm just kind of going up in tool size, because as you move from the center outward, the guide marks that we're working off of are getting wider apart, so the pattern's getting wider apart. And also I know that I want this pattern to come all the way out to the edge here. So we're gonna need to make sure that this builds all the way out. And then yes, we'll just be filling in with brush strokes there. So let me just think about what pattern I wanna do. I'm gonna start with some walking the dots. Let's use white. I need some more white in there. So we're just gonna dot at the top and then walk the dots down the side of each large blue dot that we just made. So if you guys are wanting more tutorials, I do teach over on Patreon. I have to tell you guys about Patreon because that is where I actually make money. So I don't make money from YouTube really. It's Patreon is what allows me to be able to do these free tutorials. So over on Patreon, I do weekly live painting classes. So you guys can paint with me live and ask questions as we go. I provide a list of colors and what size surface we're going to be painting on, all the details for the class I post a day or two before so that you guys can have everything ready. And then we paint together, usually every Saturday at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And then if you're unable to make it live, then you can watch the replay anytime after. So I think we're up to about 15 classes we've done so far. So if you sign up for Patreon today, you can access and watch all of those 15 past live streams, and then I'm adding one each week. So super fun. You guys check it out. All right, so I'm just thinking about how we just want to make sure our pattern is coming all the way out to the edge here so we don't have any awkward spacing. So I'm gonna take the large end of the white tool and I'm gonna get some more Portobello. So instead of doing these right next to the white ones we just made, I'm gonna leave a little bit of a gap, and that will give us a little bit more of a peak in our petal. So you can see I'm leaving a gap between the white row of dots and the one that I'm making right now. I'm just gonna wipe off the tool, and then I'm gonna use the same size tool, I think. Let's try. And then we're gonna go right up against the white one for these, and you can see that gives us a nice little peak and makes it look more like a petal. So just walk those down. Getting a little bit too much paint on my tool. There's a kid screaming outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that. It's a nice sunny day today, so everyone's outside playing. I'll probably get out there after this and go to the pool, enjoy some sunshine. Okay. So we need to keep extending this out. So let's see here. So what I'm going to do is, what color do I want? probably the shoreline. Well, let's think. Let's do shoreline. I'm going to use the large end of the blue tool. Actually, maybe we want them a little bit bigger. I'm going to get more. I'm going to use the large end of the green tool. And I'm going to make 3 dots at the tip of each petal. So you just want to build your pattern to come all the way out to the edge. So for example, if you had more space until you get to the edge, then you could add one more walking the dots to bring it all the way out. So we're basically just building the pattern in order to get it to come all the way to the edge here. And now we're going to take a brush. So I just got to decide which one. I'm going to use this size 1. So again, just a medium brush on the thinner side. And we're going to take the shoreline and just bring our brush strokes down around. Okay, I'm just rinsing the brush off. And next I'm going to use Portobello. So we can either bring the pattern, the brush strokes all the way up and start a long one and then go shorter. I think that's what I'll do because we have kind of a lot of space here. So I'm going to use Portobello, and for our brush stroke, I'm going to bring it all the way up and then down around. So it's coming all the way up to those 3 dots that we made. Okay, I'm just rinsing my brush off. Now we're just going to be filling the space in with brush strokes. So, what colors? I'm going to go for the Moody Blue. And these are just going to be slightly shorter. All right, just rinsing that off. I'm just trying to think about how many brush strokes we can do here. Maybe 2 more. It's kind of hard to tell. I'm gonna do gold next. Same brush. And I'm gonna make these slightly shorter. Metallics tend to want to go on a little bit thinner, so I have to use a lot of paint to get them to be nice and thick. Okay, so again, there's kind of like an awkward amount of space there. There's not really enough room for 2 more brush strokes, but I think I'm just gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna try to fit in just 1 more set of thick brush strokes right there. And I'm gonna use white. My white is really thick for some reason. So slightly shorter, and I just want these to meet right in the center. And they're starting on the same guide mark so that they're all the same length. I don't know why my white is so thick. Okay. So now, let's think. I want to do some swooshes here. I'm just trying to think of what color. I think I'm going to do brown. So the darker brown, the Mississippi Mud. I'm using the large end of the green tool to make a dot and then drag down. And then same thing, I'm using the large end. I need to clean the small end off. It's a little, has some paint on it. So we are just doing that little swooshing pattern in that gap there. Right in between the two white brush strokes. So this is a good example of how you can do a whole mandala using pretty much the same pattern. So yes, it varied a little bit as we went out, but they're pretty much, those are all three very similar patterns. They just get bigger. Okay. And if you want to add just a little bit more detail here, we can do some little walking the dots. Gold will look pretty, or pearl. I want to add in more pearl, so let's do that. This needs to be mixed up really good. has that liquidy stuff on the top there. I'm gonna pour a new one. And I'm gonna use the larger end of the blue tool, and I'm just gonna start on either side of that blue swoosh, or not blue, brown. And just walk some dots going just along the edge. That might be a little hard for you guys to see, but that is what it looks like. We're just gonna do that all the way around. Pretty. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this dry for a bit because I wanna go in and add a bunch of top dots and Nouveau drops, but this needs to dry first. So I'm gonna do top dots and then also some like Nouveau drops in here. Yeah, I think that will give it that final little pop of details that we need. So I'm gonna let this dry probably for about an hour, and then I'll come back and add some details. Okay, so I just went to the pool and ate lunch. It was really nice. But we're back and this is dry. So before doing top dots, I'm actually going to erase the guide marks because we don't need them anymore. So I just take a Pampers Wet Wipe and I like to just do these circular motions. And that pencil that we used, the Bressarth, comes off so easy, especially on these rock surfaces because they're so smooth. So yeah, it just rubs right off. I love those pencils. And we are just gonna add top dots and some Nouveau drops. And then varnish. All right, so pretty much I just want to fill in these gaps here, add top dots, and I think that's it. I'm mainly going to be using Nouveau drops here, so if you don't have Nouveau drops, you can just use a metallic or just a different shade of paint. So I'm actually going to grab gold Nouveau drops. I like the mustard gold is the one that I like to use. So if you don't have Nouveau drops, you can just use regular gold paint and just dot right on top of those blue. And then on top of these brown ones, I'm going to use the Wedgwood Blue Nuvo drops. I just like to practice on here first. Make sure there's no air bubbles. So just dotting right in the center of that brown dot. I love Nuvo drops. These they dry nice and plump, so gives it lots of dimension. And I want to like add a little bit of something in the center here. I think I will use this. It's called Antique Rose, but it's kind of like a, I don't know, like a light brown. And I'm just gonna go over these dots that we made in the center here. So the Portobello ones, I'm just adding these on top just to give a little bit of dimension in the center part. So this part is optional. Okay, and then I'm gonna use the gold again, and I'm gonna do some in the center here. And then when using a lot of Nuvo drops, I find that it's just so much easier to use a spray varnish, because the brush on, since these dry raised like that, it kind of gets stuck around the edges. So I just use a spray varnish. Okay, so I want to add a little bit. I'm also probably gonna use just like a pearl. This is Ivory Seashell. So let's think here. That Nuvo kind of ran a little bit. Just wipe that up with a Q-tip, and I'm gonna redo it. It was just a little too big. There. Okay, so I'm just thinking of what color I want there. I think I'll do blue. Again, feel free to use whatever colors that you have. I'm just doing a little dot in that gap right there. So I'm just going to be filling in any empty spaces. And then right here, I'll use Pearl. And then right here, I'm going to do Pearl again. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna put just a little bit of the Pearl Nuvo in my palette. And I'm gonna use the smaller end of the pink tool in that Nuvo. And I'm just gonna make a little dot right here, just above the larger one. Sometimes it's easier to do smaller dots in a little tiny space like that with a dotting tool. And we can just flip that over and use the large end and do the same right above these ones. And then I was thinking of doing some top brush strokes. I need to kind of look at this and see. I also kind of wanted to add a gold top dot on the center just to like brighten it up a little bit, or even white would look good. Let me look from above. So either gold or white would look good. I'm gonna do the gold. So I'm gonna take champagne gold. Whoa, that was a lot. I didn't mean to get that much. And then you just want to pick a tool that is smaller than the center one. So I'm going to use this 8.5 dotting rod. And this is kind of tough because I don't really have anywhere to rest my wrist. That looks pretty. Okay, and let me just think if I want to do top brush strokes. I think I will. I'm going to, this paint all in this palette has dried at this point, so I might need to just grab another one because this one's getting full. Well, it is full. Or I'm just gonna wipe out this Nuvo. And I'm gonna put some pearl. So our Deco Art metallic pearl. And I'm just gonna grab a brush. This is the number 1. You could even go smaller for this part, but I'm gonna use the number 1. And I'm just gonna go right through the center of that Mississippi mud color that we did. So just right through the dark brown. Again, this is totally optional. You can skip this part altogether if you'd like. When I picked out this palette, I actually didn't really envision much brown. I was more picturing it more of like a really subtle piece. So doing the top brush strokes with a lighter color will just kind of soften it a little bit. And it just adds cool dimension. You may or may not like that look. I think it looks cool. I'm gonna do the same up here on that dark, I think this one was the Portobello. So we're not quite covering the whole thing. We're just going down the center. We still want some showing through. If I ever look at a piece and I like feel like a certain area of it or certain pattern is a little bit dark, then I will do these top brush strokes over in either like a lighter color or just like a metallic to give it some, to kind of brighten it up a little bit. Okay, and I'm just looking to see if it needs anything else. I'm going to rinse off the brush. I'm going to do one more set of top brush strokes. I'm going to use the gold. And I'm going to go just again. Right through the center of the oyster beige ones. These get a little bit more tricky because I should have done these ones first because I am trying to be careful not to put my hand in that wet paint. Okay, so last one, and I just want to look at this. Yeah, that looks really pretty. Okay, so now again, we are going to let this dry and then I will varnish. I will not show the varnish process this time, but I'll go grab the varnish that I'm going to use just to show you guys. I have been loving this crystal clear varnish by Krylon. It's glossy, but not too glossy. You guys know I love a good matte, but lately I've been using these. I really love a glossy on a rock as well. And again, I love using a spray varnish, especially when using a bunch of Nuvo drops. It just goes on really nice and evenly and dries pretty quickly. So that's what I will be using to varnish, and I will show you guys the final result. Okay, and here is the final result after I've added 2 coats of varnish. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like this video, share it, and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more tutorials. All right, we will see you guys next time.